This is an interview on the 22nd of April 2004 with Charles Richard Pyke, 39th Battalion, V42272. When did you first join the 39th Battalion?
I joined the 39th Battalion actually from the 52nd Battalion, which was at Ngambie Road, Seymour. At the time we'd been called up by the government to do 3 months training in and then 3 months out. We'd already done 3 months at Ngambie Road, and on the second call in they were sorting us out. A lot of them engineers, and then they wanted infantry and machine gunners and transport drivers, so we decided to, instead of doing the foot slogging like we done in the first 3 months, we could have a go at the transport. So we applied for that and got in and got our driving licences. And then while we was there, we'd been out one night picking up troops that had been out because it started to rain, and we went out in the trucks, picked them up. When we come in, we found on our sergeant's counter there was they were going to form a special battalion to go over to New Guinea, and it was going to be the 39th Battalion, and they wanted 5 transport drivers. So what we had a bit of a talk, we says, well, what about being in it? And there was Sam, my brother, Jim Scaler, Jeff Thompson and Smokey Howson. So we said when they call out in the morning, we'll step out, and they were going to keep us all together in the one company. So that's how we come to get into the 39th. We volunteered to go as transport drivers in the 39th over to New Guinea.
Why were you called Chocos or Chocolate Soldiers?
Oh, Chocos, well, actually we was called up by the government. We were forced into action, FIA, and then the AOF were troops that had volunteered to fight overseas, where we only volunteered to defend Australia. We was conscripted, more or less. We was forced into action.
Was your uniform different to the AIF?
Yeah, actually the AIF on their shoulder, they wore a badge written Australia where the Chocos didn't, and on your colour patch, around the outside of the colour patch for AIF there was a grey background where the Choco was just the ordinary straight out colour patch. That's how you could tell the difference. Other than that, the uniform was the same. It was the same old khaki drab, same hat, same everything. We weren't any different.
Why was there a lot of dissension between the Chocos and the AIF?
Oh, it was the AIF. Well, they reckoned that the Chocos would melt when there was a bit of heat. So they just called us Chocos. So that's the way it went. But the AIF, like when we went into Darley from the 52nd Battalion, we had a camp on the right-hand side, and all the AIF troops that was coming through and being sent over to the Middle East as reinforcements, they were AIF, and they used to have a wet canteen. And we was dry. We weren't allowed to drink. We was chocos. We couldn't handle the grog. But what used to happen, the AIF would get into their wet canteen, and after they'd had a skinful, they used to come over and belt our scores up, knuckle on.
Mm-hmm. And how were you camped at Darley? How were you camped, and what were your barracks like?
Well, actually, the barracks were good. There was the Nissen huts. They were the big Nissen huts, steel huts, and you had a good cookhouse, a big cookhouse built permanent. There was a permanent camp. It wasn't just under canvas or anything like that. It was a camp that you could. Didn't matter on what the weather was, whether it was hot or dry or whatever it was. You had plenty of cover and good facilities, good eats. What we do was just more or less was training through the day. We'd be out. We'd do bayonet practice, or you might next day go to the rifle range and do a bit of machine gunning and a bit of rifle shooting down the rifle range. And then night time they used to take us and put us out in the paddocks and walk home by compass, and it just learnt you the main basic things of living out in the wide open spaces and hardening you up, toughen you up.
But you still slept on the floor?
Yeah, our bunks, we had wooden floors. They're wooden floors, and you had a bag of straw, like a palliasse. You had straw in it, and you had blankets, 3 blankets. You covered your palliasse with a blanket, and you slept under the other 2 blankets with your overcoat over the top. You had no pillows or sheets or nothing like that. But it was pretty good, really.
You went on a street parade when they announced that you'd be going to overseas. Did they tell you where you were going overseas?
Yeah, we knew we was going to New Guinea. We were told that we was going to the 49th Battalion was already in New Guinea, and we was going to relieve them, and we was going to take over their quarters, and they were going to come back home.
And then Pearl Harbor was bombed on early December.
Yeah.
And the 39th had a Christmas dinner at Darley.
That's right, yeah. We had a final march through the city. There was big AIF contingent of reinforcements going to the Middle East, and they were having a final march through the city of Melbourne, and we joined them. Actually, we was with them, and I think we were the first troops there to be march through the city with shorts and shirts, and that was the way she went. And then from then we went back to Darley, and Christmas dinner, we had Christmas dinner at Darley, and then the next day, Boxer Day, was on the train. We went to Sydney. We headed from Darley down to Melbourne. Then there was 2 big troop trains. They took us to up to Sydney. On the way up, we had a meal at Wangaratta, I think it was. And then the trains never used to go straight through to Sydney. We had to change at Albury into the Sydney train, and then through to Woolloomooloo. There from Woolloomooloo, they took us on barges, and we went out onto the Aquitania, onto the troop ship.
What was Sydney Harbour like then? Was there other ships there at the time?
There was other ships there. There was the Queen Mary was there and the Queen Elizabeth. They were both anchored there. But we got the Aquitania. That was our ship. And Aquitania it had been transferred into a troop carrying ship. There was 5 decks, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we were on G deck. That was right down below the waterline. And it was hot, stinking hot, and the engines, you could smell the engines, and it was, the quarters were, you just couldn't sleep. It was no air conditioning or anything like that. It was just too hot, and with everyone in there, it was just, we used to just sleep up on the deck of a night, lay around on the deck, but you always had to carry your life jacket with you. Didn't matter where you went, whenever you went anywhere, even for your breakfast or whatever meals you had to take your life jacket with you just in case.
And what did you do on the time on the ship? How long were you on the ship from Sydney to Port Moresby?
It took us about 5 days to get to Port Moresby after we left Sydney. We had escort ships, I just forget the names of them, and there was 2 cargo boats that we took with our cargo. There was 2 40,000 cargo boats loaded, and they only travelled slow, so the Aquitania, only had to travel slow too, but we had the escort navy that escorted us over. One of the like the warships that was there, it had on it was a plane, an aeroplane that used to patrol through the day looking for submarines, and how they got it into the air off the deck, it was like a big catapult. They wound it back and it had a ramp, and they'd rev up. We used to watch it. It'd rev up full bore, and then they'd let it go and it'd shoot up, and the catapult would take it up, and then it'd nearly drop into the water, but with the engines revving full up, you used to just take off, and then it'd be out patrol all day, and then when it come to the afternoon, they'd land on the water. It was a seaplane. I think they used to call it the Walrus. And it'd land on the water, and then the ship would come over and they'd drop a crane down, and pilot would hook it on the hook, and they'd lift her up, put her on the deck. One day there was out, and then there was the ship start blowing their hooters, and the warship circled us, went right around us with belching out black smoke, put a screen right around the Aquitania, what they reckon was a submarine, and there was few depth charges were being dropped too by the escorting ships that we did have with us. But other than that, we got through pretty good.
There were meant to be about 4,600 troops in total on the Aquitania, and their average age was 18 and a half. The 53rd Battalion from Sydney was also on board. Do you remember a special games day that you had on New Year's Day?
Oh yes, yeah. Like when we were on deck and that, their New Year's Day they organised a sports day, and there was relay racing and cockfighting, and then there was a wheelbarrow race on, and Archie Skilbeck, he wanted to be in it, and he said to me, "Will you wheel me?" And so I wheeled Skilly, but what I done, I lifted him well up, and I had him off the ground, and his hands weren't touching the deck properly. And as he went along, like we won easy. There's a bit of a protest there. They reckon we cheated there. Then we had a run off in the grand final of the race, and we done the same thing, but they let her go, and we finished up. Our prize was a cigarette case, a gold cigarette case with Aquitania written on it, souvenir, and that was our prize for winning the race.
What was the morale like on the trip over, and how did you feel about going to a strange country?
Oh, we reckon it was good. Like, the trip over was, well, you'd had nothing much to do. You might get a job, your submarine watch, you're watching out, you had binoculars, and you're just watching a certain area of water, but they were all around the ship, fellas watching and that, and with it was, well, you had nothing to do, you just shorts, that was all, you didn't worry about a shirt, it was hot and humid and just laid in the sun and enjoyed it. The meals on the boat were good, like, we got good tucker, I don't know how they fed us all, like sort of when it come meal time. The officers' mess, it was real elaborate. They were living up big. They was in the, must have been the passengers' dining rooms. Oh, they had real good setup. But our tucker was good. Like, it wasn't rubbishy stuff. But a few of the boys got seasick. You'd see them ripping down the side of the ship, and then different fellas would bet, they'd say, oh, 2 bobby misses, or other blokes say 2 bobby doesn't make it, and you're on, and he'd get set, and well, if he didn't spit over the side, they'd collect their money. They'd bet on anything. Like, it was just more or less entertainment that way, recon. There on it too was nurses. There was nurses, and there's two swimming pools on the Aquitania. There was 2, but the only thing was with the troops, we weren't allowed in them. There was only the officers and the nurses were allowed. We all used to just sit round and perv on them. That was all we done there. Bit of entertainment.
When you landed at Port Moresby, where did you think you were going, and what was your job going to be?
We thought we were going to relieve the 49th Battalion, and we were going to have their barracks, but that wasn't to be. When we were on the ship, before we had all our gear ready to unload, but the Aquitania couldn't get in right onto the pier. We were anchored out in the bay, and the natives, they come out in their lacators. They were little sailing boats they had, and kids, and our fellas start throwing money over, and they'd dive in the water to get it. And, oh, they were doing good, like they were all thrown in, and they got a bit cunning at the finish, like you'd throw pennies in and they wouldn't chase it, they'd only chase the silver one. They liked the coins, the good silver ones. They didn't go for the pennies. The pennies, they wouldn't worry, it was silver, they'd be in it. When because they were in the nude, like they were in the nude, and like when they get the money, they used to put it in their mouth and hold it in their mouth. You see the little kids and all that, they'd all be holding the money in their mouth.
When you finally landed and came off the boat, you were told you were going to Murray Barracks, but in fact you ended up marching to the 7 Mile aerodrome.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we went out. When we got off the ship, we started to get off about 4 o'clock in the afternoon down the rope gangways was. We had the Navy fellas, they had launches, battle launches, and that was stacking them on, and some of them were on platforms, floating platforms. You'd get on that with your gear and they'd tow you in. Then we all assembled there on the land, and then we'd start to march out. We went out through Moresby, out past Murray Barracks. We went through there, out, and then it was 7 mile out, and that was it. We pulled up there for the night. That was our sleeping quarters. It was amongst the gum, small saplings there were, gum trees and all that, and long grass, and that was it. We says, well, the officer says, well, this is it. We're pulling up here now. This is our destination.
Was there any camp there?
No, nothing. There was no camp. There was no nothing. All there was mosquitoes by the hundreds. So it was lousy with them. And at that particular time, we had our shorts and shirts on, and they ate us alive, really did. There was no latrines, no water. The only water you had was what you took yourself in your own water bottle. You always kept your water bottle full. And fellas were pretty dry, and they drank their water and all that. And in the morning when we woke up and looked out, and we was right on the edge of the 7 mile airstrip. There was nothing there, just a bit of an airstrip it was, and that's when we got our meal for breakfast. There was mess parade, and I don't know what happened. The cook, poor old cook, he was in trouble. He only had a couple of cans of beans, and he had to make them stretch out amongst like a company of A, B, C, D, E company. E company was the machine gun company. That was all there at a big heap, really. And our cook, like there, you got about 8 or 10 beans in your Dixie, or on your plate if you had a plate. You had no cup of tea, I think, and a couple of biscuits. Well, that was it. That was your breakfast, like it. We reckon, a bit rough. With an old Lieutenant Hoffman, he was our lieutenant. He was there, and there was Laurie Allen and Archie Skilbeck, and they was carrying on over their beans, and the LRB good send me more food and carrying on, and Lieutenant Hoffman come around and says to him, oh yeah, I'll talk to you all in a moment after we've finished breakfast. But it didn't take us long to finish it. There was only a few beans left. And then he told us what was what. You know, he says, well, this is it. We're here. He says, this is where you learn to be a soldier now. You've been treated pretty good right through now. It looks like tough times. He says, I've been caught before. And he says, well, we're going to make it the best we can, so make the best of what we got, and we don't want any whinging, and everyone helps one another, and that's it. We've got tents, but they're out on the cargo ships. We've got plenty of food. We've got 2 40,000-ton ships out there. They're loaded with stores. He said the only thing is they've got to be unloaded. He says, there's no one here to unload them, only us. So he says, looks like what I've heard is I've been down to company headquarters where all the officers congregated for a bit of a mess, talk, and he says, we're going to have working parties, get our tents and mosquito nets and that, but actually they'd loaded, the ships had been loaded all wrong, and we couldn't get the tents 4 days. Got the trucks off. Actually, I was a truck driver, and I got, after the first day, I got called in to go into Port Moresby to drive, unloading off of the ship. But before we went, there was, coming from the 12 mile, there was a Loki River, there's a big pumping station, and there was a big water main. It was a big, well, it must have been about a 2-foot pipe, but it wasn't buried in the ground, it was on the top of the ground. And it was bringing the water from the Loki River to Port Moresby. That was the water supply. And someone had managed to find a plug in the top of the pipe, and they'd worked on her and got her loose and took her out. And we had a beautiful shower, like we had water going up 100 foot in the air, and every Tom, Dick and Harry just stripped off. The officers and all, they all just stripped off and showered up big, filled our water bottles. The way to fill the water bottle was to get a gum leaf, big gum leaf, and make it into a, so when the water fell down, it hit on the leaf and run into your water bottle. It was the only hope of filling the water bottle. We all filled up in that. It must have went for a couple of hours before they turned her off. Then I went into Port Moresby, then driving off the wharf, carting all sorts. We went in, we was on Healer Beach, right in Port Moresby. Was just there. We took a blanket with us and our mess tins, and we didn't know how long we was going to stay in there or what. Then when we got the vehicles and we drove for 12 hours carting stuff off. The fellas on the winches on that, there was mainly the 49th Battalion fellas, and they'd been doing a bit of this unloading on the winches and that. They're a bit rough on the driving though, and they'd swing around and might drop a bit of stuff in the water. And you had to watch out, like, and they'd drop it on the wharf, and then our guys, they had loading parties there, loading the trucks. Well, sometimes you might get a load of petrol, and then, well, Port Moresby area, the road was, there was only 7 mile of road. It went from Port Moresby out to the airstrip, was bitumen, and then that was it. That was the only road that was a made road. And for us, like, we didn't know any places. They used to go by miles. You'd go, oh, that's got to go out to the 3 mile. When you get out to the 3 mile, there'd be someone there and they'd see what you had on. You had petrol. Oh, yeah, go down there through the scrub, and there's fellas down there who'd roll the drums off into the ditches. Some of the drums would take off downhill and that, 44-gallon drums, and you'd unload it, go back and get more. You'd go for 12 hours. Next load you might have bombs, 250-pound bombs or 500-pounders, and you'd find out then when you go to the 4 mile out, and then they'd take them out and dump them out in the scrub. And then a lot of the material in the sports arena at Port Moresby, they had a big sports ground, and they used that to stack all the tin fruit, all meat and vegetables, and milk, skim milk, and jams, and tin fruit, whatever it was. The ground there actually was stacked, I'd say, be about 10 foot high. There was only room for the vehicles just to drive through, and the fellas would unload them and stack them up in a big heap. They didn't care what was mixed in with what. It was a matter of getting it off of these cargo ships, because they didn't know what had happened with the Japanese, whether they could get in and bomb us or what. They didn't know. at that particular time. Paul Harbour had fallen, and we didn't know exactly what was involved in the whole system. And we were there for about 5 days, and I went back to the unit, and we had a tent. Laurie Allen, he was the batman to Lieutenant Hoffman, and of course I was the driver. Laurie Allen and I, we had a tent, and well, the other boys, they had a tent, and there was, I think, 4, 6 to each tent. They had them all up when I got back. They had the tents up and had the area clean. And the cook had a bit of he had a canvas fly pulled out and had his supplies there. And his fire was just a trench dug in the ground. There was no stoves or anything like that. It was just open fire. He had a few Dixies he used to pull out, and all you could do was boil water, and there was nothing to cook.
What was your food like? What was your main food?
Oh, the main food, I think, was we had bully beef, biscuits. You didn't get bread. There's no bread. You got these army biscuits. So it was hard as hell. They were. And baked beans. You get skim milk. The old cook, he'd done a pretty good job, really, with the stuff that he had, because everything was dehydrated. You got no fresh potatoes. They were all done up in tins, 4-gallon tins of dehydrated potatoes. They were bloody horrible. Like, and the milk was skim, and he used to mix it up with a bit of water, and sometimes he might have porridge for breakfast. He'd cook her up with that, and you'd get a bit of this milk on her and that. She wasn't too bad. But you had sugar and tea, like had tea. No, actually there, we weren't too bad. We thought it was a bit rough, but later on it got a lot worse. At least it wasn't raining, it was hot, stinking hot.
What did you wear?
Mainly we wore just shorts and shirts. We did of a night, once it got the sun down, you had to put your long trousers on, and you had to wear your shirt with your sleeves pulled down because of mosquitoes. They used to have mosquito lotion that issued to you. It was in a little bottle, mosquito lotion, but the mosquitoes liked it. I think it attracted them more so than what it did good chasing them away. We used to get in the tent and light a fire in the tent and put green leaves on it to make it smoke. That used to foof them out for a while. Well, it was when we were playing cards or that. Then we had mosquito nets. We got our mosquito nets. Well, that was pretty good. You slept under them, but you slept on the ground. The infantry always slept on the ground. They didn't have no beds, no palliasses or that. You dug a little bit of a hip hole and put a blanket in it with your mosquito net over it. You put the blanket on the mosquito net, and you'd always do that in the daytime, so you knew that there was no mosquitoes in there. You'd get them all out, and then when you went to bed, you slept in the nude. You leave your boots, your shorts and shirt right where you could grab them, because when they started bombing, you could just slip your shirt and pants and boots on and into the slit trench. The old Mozzies used to tickle us up.
Within the first 6 weeks, a third of the troops had dysentery, and they shifted them away from your camp.
Oh yeah, a lot of the fellas, see, with the first up with the toilets, they never had any. They dug a bit of a hole like that, but it it was a hole. Later on, it got better, and we didn't have any water. Like you had a water bottle full of water that lasted you for the day. That was it. You shaved, you done everything with it. Your water bottle, you couldn't wash your clothes, you couldn't do nothing like that. It was just straight out stiff luck. If there was no water, you can't do nothing. And dysentery, they got dysentery. A lot of the fellas were pretty crooked. The real bad cases, they sent them all over. They had a place, they called it Lightning Ridge. Had tents over there, and they had, well, they never had enough orderly, so they just had ordinary soldiers more or less looking after the fellas because they were too weak in that. They couldn't, they used to starve them and give them a dose of some black stuff and clean them out. Lightning Ridge, if you went in there, you was in a bad way.
So your first couple of months there was really just unloading ships?
Oh, we was unloading ships, yeah, for months, 3 months, whatever, at least. We never got much way in training, like, there was no training. It was duty in Port Moresby. When I wasn't driving, I'd be in unloading ships or unloading them and loading stuff into different quarters. There was one day when we was out on a lot of stuff had been sent out to this dump, and we were there and we had to sort it out. Like all the it was mixed up. There was beans, baked beans, and there was bully beef, and they putting all the bully beef one side and the baked beans another, and tin fruit, whatever it was. And Angau, that was a lot of the natives. They was Labor Corps they were, and they was there too. They had a chap in charge of them, one of the Australians, but he could speak their lingo and talk to. We couldn't talk to him. We didn't know what was what. And we're there anyway. One of the boys had his false teeth, and we'd had a smoke and there was plenty of tucker there, so we had a few tins of whatever was going, had a feed there for morning tea it was, we reckon. And he's wiping his bottom teeth, and these natives seen him with his teeth, and they went into a huddle. They looked at, they didn't know what was going on, so anyway, the our bloke, he said to the bloke in charge of him, he said, "What's wrong with them?" He says, "Oh, they reckon you're a witch doctor. You took your teeth out." He says, "They've never seen false teeth." He said, "Oh, haven't they?" He said, "Oh, he took the top set out too, and he put them both together. He went over to them, went clunk, clunk, and they took off." And he says, "You bloody fool," he says, "now I'll never get them back today." He says, "You're no good." He says, you're definitely a witch doctor." He says, "That's it, they're gone." He says, "I won't get them back." He says, "I won't get them back till tomorrow now." They were gone for the day. So that was that.
So you used to work with the natives, unpacking and...
Oh, the natives, yeah, they were unloading stuff. They was Labor Corps, they was doing everything, yeah. When we got there and they start to drop a few bombs, all the natives, they went bush, they took off, they went into the hills, and then Angau was Australian New Guinea Administrative Unit. Well, every male in the natives was in Angau. They was controlled by the government fellows that was looking after them and all that, and they got paid I believe, £7 a year, but they're allowed to have Sunday off.
Mm.
And they got fed, and they got tobacco. They used to get bung twist, we used to call it. It was like a big long lump of licorice, and they used to get a ration of that. They used to have to cut it up, and they'd roll it in a piece of newspaper. It would be about that long, rolled up that, pretty fat, and they'd light it, and a few puffs of it, and then he'd have a few puffs, and he'd pass it on. They'd all just pass it on, all till it went. Oh, geez, it was bloody horrible. It nearly choked you. Like, I had a go at it once, just tried a puff of it. Oh, nearly killed you, like you just took your breath away. But they used to smoke it. They reckon she was good stuff. Boom twist.
The bombing raid started in Port Moresby about February, and you dug slit trenches and dug in.
Yeah, on the 7 mile, we were on the 7 mile drone. What our job was to guard the 7 mile airstrip. They reckon they'd come in from Bootless Inlet, and they'd also drop paratroopers there. We was there to guard the drone. We was camped right on the edge of the 7 mile drone. That was Don Company of the 39th Battalion. There was 16 platoon, 17 platoon and 18 platoon just there. That was our job there, to guard that.
After the bombing raids had been going on for about 4 months, the powers that be had decided that troops were needed up in the Owen Stanleys. And how were you transported up to Kokoda when the action had started for a really serious...
Well, they'd been bombing us. They used to come in pretty well every day and bomb the airstrip. If they didn't bomb the airstrip, they'd bomb Port Moresby. The day previous to their bombing, they'd send a reconnaissance plane over. They all come over very high, and with the whatever track that recce plane took, the bombers would take that the next day, or they might come over in the night. It was a moonlight night. They'd come over and bomb in the night. There'd be anything from 8 planes to 28 planes at a time, but they used to come over to big height. They was really high up. They was 20,000, might have been 40,000 feet. That first up, at Port Moresby, we had no fighters, we had some Lockheed Hudson bombers that used to go, and Rabaul had fallen. 2nd 22nd was at Rabaul, and Rabaul in New Britain had fallen, and the Hudson bombers used to go over and bomb them. We had 7 of them. That was our Air Force. We had no fighters. There was no fighters. And then they got the ACAC guns, the big 3.7 ACAC. They were up in Port Moresby on Pyke Hill. And they used to, when the chap bombers had come over Port Moresby or over the airstrip, they used to fire up their shells, and you'd see them exploding amongst the aircraft. But what happened then was the shrapnel from our exploding anti-aircraft bombs had collapsed down and come through our area, and with our slit trenches that we had, we was ordered to put covers over the top. They'd put sandbags over the top. You only had a little bit to get in, and you sat each side and kept covered.
How did you feel when you thought you were being attacked for the first time?
Oh, well, when we got attacked with the bombers,
Bombs.
we had no say in it really. We didn't know it was going to be till the bombs start going off, and then we was told to dig slit trenches, but the ground was that hard. It was, oh, geez, it was hard, dry. And after the first bomb attack, you couldn't get a shovel anywhere. Everyone wanted to dig a hole like you. Everyone wanted the shovel. We only had a couple of shovels and a pick. You know, dug your slit trench. It was big enough for two to get in. It was about 18 inches wide and about 4 foot long, but you dug it down about 5 feet. With the bombing raid, see, us being camped on the side of the 7 Mile, when they'd bomb the airstrip, a lot of the bombs wouldn't hit the airstrip, they'd come through our area. But you were safe as long as you was below the cover of the ground when the bombs went off, unless you got one right on top or right alongside you, you're safe really. Anything was about 10 feet or so away. It used to throw a lot of mud up or dirt and half bury at times with that, but you could get away with that, like it was all right unless you got the direct hit. But they used to have time bombs. After they'd finished bombing, you'd get out of your slit trench and reckon they were beauty. You was having a look around, and all of a sudden, boom, there'd be a delayed action. They'd have a time action on them, and you never knew what was going to go on next.
What did you remember of the ship McDewey?
Oh, the McDewey, that was a cargo ship. It was owned by Burns Phillips. They was importers. They used to import Moresby. They had a big, like a Kmart type of store. They had everything in it. It was owned by Burns Phillips. And the McDewey used to bring the supplies over from Sydney and Brisbane and that, and they'd unload. And when the McDewey, they come over one day and bombed, and they missed the McDewey. I was with Doug McLean then, had taken over our company, like on the old soldiers that we had from the First World War. After 3 months, they were all sent back to Australia, and we got Lieutenant McLean, and he was quite good, a young officer and that. With the McDewey, we was due the next day to go in, and we was on loading party. He says, we're unloading in the morning and go in at 8 o'clock. The trucks would pick us up and go in and unload the McDewey. And then right on 8 o'clock coming, our part was cancelled. Our loading party was cancelled. And we just went round. I don't know what we done that day. But then on the afternoon, when the Japs came over, they hit the McDewey and sank it. They didn't sink it right at the harbour. It knocked a big hole in it and it was sinking, but the captain on the McDewey had taken it right over to the right-hand side, and he'd beached it right over on the far side. It burnt over there for a couple of weeks. Smoke coming out of it and that. There was quite a few of our fellas that were in there unloading it, when that they got killed. Quite a lot got killed on that, on the McDewey.
Now we'll talk about the Kokoda Track.
Yeah.
You were actually on the first plane load of about 17 troops that was flown into Kokoda.
Yeah, well, with on the Kokoda trial was actually B Company was Captain Sam Templeton. He was the only AIF fella from the First World War that was left in New Guinea. All the others had been sent back, but he wouldn't go. He was, we used to call him Uncle Sam, Captain Sam Templeton. He's a good bloke. And then he had a B Company was going over to Buna, to garrison Buna, and they walked the Kokoda Track, and they took with them, there's about 200 natives. They cleaned the track a bit and put steps and all that in, and then Sam, he got to Kokoda, and then he had to go out to Buna, because its supplies, a lot of them went round by a small vessel, took a lot of his supplies. And when he got round there, he just got his supplies, and then that night the Jap come in and started shelling from a warship, shelled Buna, and that's when the Jap landed troops at Buna, and Sam Templeton with B Company, he was the first company to contact the Japanese when they landed at Buna, and what they were doing, the Jap had sent out a patrol, and Sam's company had hide in the side of the jungle, and when they come along the track, they'd open up on them, and then they'd nick back and take up another position, and then the Jap had to find him where he was again. They'd been doing that for 5 days. We were back at Port Moresby then at the time, and with the we'd get word to say what was going on, and Lieutenant McLean, our officer, says, "Oh, we're going to go over and give Sam a hand. We're going to fly over tomorrow." Plane load of us. There was 12 of us in the plane, there was. We'd go over, and because Sam's mum had been 5 days, and they're pretty tired, sort of trying to hold them, and I reckon it was only a company of Japanese at the time. Doug McLean, at night, it was about 10 o'clock at night, he called me up and he gave me a Bren gun, a new Bren gun. I'd never seen one. He said, "I'll take this, Pyke, and clean the grease and that out of it, and load your magazines and that, because we're not going to take the Lewis gun. We had the old Lewis gun from the First World War, and we're going to have this new gun." So we had cleaned the mud and the grease and that out of her, and learned how to load her, and reckoned she'd work, and read the book on her, and the next day we was using her in action. We flew over, like in the morning we went down onto the airstrip, and we got in the plane and took off. It must have been about 11 o'clock, I think, around about then. We got over, then I'm looking out, and I'm in the I thought, Jesus, it's a pretty big joint. There's a lot of troops that around. I thought, Jesus, it's a pretty big joint, this Kokoda. I didn't know. We'd come back because we couldn't land. They'd had all 44-gallon drums on the airstrip. The plane couldn't land, and we come back, and we landed at the 7-mile strip, and we had a feed. And there was Boston bombers. There was about a dozen of them took off. They was going to bomb the Japanese at Buna. They was a light bomber, and they took off. They'd only gone about 20 minutes, and they were back. There's 12 went out and two was missing out of that lot. The Zeros followed them pretty well right back to Moresby. And then it was our turn, and we had a load on the plane. They said half hour, and we'd had a feed, the bully beef biscuits, and we got on the plane, and away we went. But when we went, we had with us escort of, there was 12 fighter planes, the Kitty Hawk fighters from the 75th Fighter Squadron. They escorted us over. But on the way over there, they got caught up in a dogfight with the Zeros over and going through the gap. That was the highest part of the mountains in the Owen Stanleys. And the wireless operator, he came out, he said to us, he said there was a dogfight on, he says, and the Zeros are in combat with our fellas, and he says, if they happen to fly in and can have a shot at us, he says, you guys with those Bren guns, you got permission to knock the window out and have a shot at them. He says, but whatever you do, don't hit the wings on the plane, because that's our fuel line. But was lucky enough that he come out and says that they'd nicked off, and then we just come over there, went down and landed straight at Kokoda. And away we went from there. We landed and threw all our gear. We had our packs and everything. Doug McLean, he said, oh, stick all your packs here in a heap. We won't want them. Leave them here. We just had fighting gear. We had shorts and shirts and tin helmets, and away we went. Out, and the first village we come to was Efogi. And when we got there, must have been about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It took us about 3 hours to get out there, 3.5 hours walking time. And the B Company fellas were starting to come in, and they were going to take up defence of Efogi. They was going to hold that because they got chased back, and with that, there's there I got a position laying with our Lewis gunner was down the track, and our fellas were coming in. You had to be careful because our fellas were coming in, and then the next thing it was Japs coming in, and you had to be careful because you didn't know for sure whether one of our blokes or a Jap. Well, just over from me was one of the Arthur Swords, his name was. He had a Lewis gun. He was taken up. He was a wake up because he'd done a bit of fighting along the track, and he knew which were Japs and that. And then the next time we got there, was a big bloke. I suppose he'd be about 6 foot tall. He just sort of propped on the tap on the track and looked, and next thing Arthur Swords gave him a burst. I don't know whether he killed him or whether he jumped into the jungle. But what happened was, I thought they're supposed to be little fellas, and they're bloody monsters they was. They were the Japanese 144th Japanese Marines that we struck, that had come right down from the islands and never had a defeat, and they were full of confidence.
How did you feel as you first started out on the track, knowing you were going into combat?
Oh, well, it was just like ordinary. We'd had a fair bit of training and along the line with what was what, and it just didn't seem any different. Like it was, we knew we was going into do battle. As Lieutenant McLean, he said to us, he says, just remember, he says, if they can't see you, they can't shoot you, so camouflage is a main thing as far as we're concerned. he says, when you're shooting, make every shot count, because the more ammunition we can save, like, we don't have to carry it so much. Otherwise, supplies are not overloaded when you're on the trail. They never had what you call a heck of a lot of spare ammunition around.
What sort of help did you get from your leaders, and how did the men treat their leaders in return?
Oh, we had no worries with leaders. Like, we was learnt that way, that everyone was a leader. Like, even your sergeant or that, he was there. But one thing about Doug McLean, he learnt us that way, that we could all replace one another. Like, some days he'd make sure that everyone in the platoon was capable of doing things and giving orders and taking over, more or less. So we had no worries there with leaders at all. Like, we got on well. Actually, everyone was the same. Sergeants, corporals, you was all lieutenants. They didn't wear any rank or anything when you're in action. They were just same as us. They was number one. Like, we knew who they were or that, but they didn't want to be distinguished. Otherwise, the Japs would pick off the leaders. That more or less made everyone equal right around. We all ate the same. Whatever was there to be ate, we shared. Sometimes there wasn't anything to eat, so you had no worries whacking her up then, most you, along the line. If you happen to get cut off and lost in the jungle each day, you'd your meals, well, when you're in combat, you're issued with your day's ration, and that was it. You ate it when you wanted to or when you could, and if it was gone, it's gone. You didn't get no more. There was no extras, and if you happened to get cut off and you come back in a day later or so, there wasn't no backup that you left from the day before. Day to day, it was just one day at a time. It was, the tucker wasn't over supplied, was pretty ruddy tight. I'll tell you what, we were hungry many times.
I'd just like you to describe the jungle.
Oh, in the jungle, actually, it was heavy in parts. It was that thick. All there was like a tunnel going through it. You could walk through it, but you had no hope of seeing the sun. You were blanked out. It was tall trees and overgrown creepers and the wet, the condensation, the way it was with the clouds had come down and condense the water on the leaves, and it'd drip. Even if it wasn't raining, it'd drip down and drip on you. You was always wet. Very seldom did you get what you call a dry day, unless you happened to be, at times we'd get a day off sort of thing and be back out of action while you were ready and all that, but you was allowed to get a little bit of sunlight and dry out a bit of that. There was plenty of water, no worries with water. You always kept your water bowl full. There was always streams all along the trail and no trouble there.
Was it hot and did it rain every day?
Yeah, it was. Nights got cold. Like in the ranges itself, it wasn't really hot. It was humid, sort of humid weather, and you got sweaty and, well, you was wet and you're sweaty, and you never had what you call change of clothes. You're wet all the time, and it'd rain, quite often it'd rain, like for hours at a time, and just poured. You had a ground sheet, you put it on, and you had a tin hat, and you just wet. Your feet were wet, they were wet all the time. The trouble was with your boots would break across the bottom. Like you're up and down the hills and that all the time, and the boots we had, well, we'd been there about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and my boots had broken right across and fitted up. I only had the outside part, no foot, we just walking on the sock. I took a size 7, but I finished up back at Pura Creek Crossing and I found a number 9 boot. So I wore that. It was a big one, and the other boot I fitted up was a bit small, so I had a long one and a short one. Just flopped along in the mud with that, but that was all right. At least I could walk.
How did you manage to sleep?
Actually, you didn't really take off 8 hours sleep or anything like that. There was no way of that. Like you might get a position where you could lay down in the jungle, but you never really slept because you'd doze off and have a bit of a sleep, but then there'd be shooting going on. You'd wake up, and then when there wasn't shooting on, you'd sort of dream and think there was, sort of thing. But you never really went off on a deep sleep. No way. Well, you'd sit up. You might sit up against a tree and lay back against a tree with you. If you could find a bit of a log, you could sit on that and sit on the log and lay against a tree, and you had your ground sheet and tin hat on. It rained like crazy. When it rained, it really poured. Like it was water running everywhere. It was wet, really wet. And at night it got cold, like you got cold with the... we used to have the ground sheet on, and you'd breathe inside your ground sheet. You had your nose outside, you'd breathe in and you'd blow the air out on the inside. That was to try and get a little bit of the warmth into yourself along the line, mate. But you never really slept, not what you call a sleep. You just loved to have somewhere where you had a bit of cover and you could lay down and have a sleep, but it just wasn't there. There was just nothing there. There was no shelters or odd villages or that you'd come to or that, but you never slept what you call sleep. You might be in the villages and that, and you'd go off a bit, but you was on your toes all the time. There was always trouble that way, sleeping.
What did a village consist of?
Well, most of the villages was grass huts. They was built up on stilts high up, and they had steps going up into them. They were high up. Get in there, and actually they were well thatched. They were native huts, and they was mainly walking distance, a day's walking in between village to village with the main walk. You might do 6 hours or you might do 8 hours. You never went by miles, you just went by hours, how many hours. Sometimes you could look across and see the village where you was going to go to. They say, oh, that's 6 hours. But that was if you didn't stop. If you just walked at a steady pace and you didn't stop.
What were the river crossings like?
Oh, the crossings of the rivers, that was a bit hard. Yeah, some of them weren't deep, like they was, well, weren't deep when I say deep, they up over your knees or that, you get through, but Eora Creek crossing and there, that was rugged there, that was logs, big trees that had been fallen across on the rocks and that, and there was big trees, and our fellas had chipped a bit of the round part off so as I was a little bit flat, but there was no handrails or nothing like that. You just blonded across them, but they were wet too. They was always wet and slippery, and you had to be very careful. If you wasn't too good, you'd crawl across. Some of them used to crawl across to get across rather than if you went off, you went well down into the water. The water was running pretty fast. That was a Eura Creek crossing. It was a nasty one, that.
Did you have any maps or communications? Was there any?
No, we had no maps. We actually we didn't know. All we knew was that was the track, that was it, and that goes back to Port Moresby, and if you happen to get cut off, which we did at Oivy, when we was at Oivy, we got cut off at Oivy, or what we were cut off with. At Oivy we was surrounded by the Japanese. They'd got right around Oivy village. Oivy village would be, well, big as a cricket ground, I suppose, like the area, but there was about 4 huts so high up on stilts, and the Japs had got around us and locked us in, and there was Doug McLean, one of the fellas come down and said to me, oh, Doug McLean wants you, he's over there. It was dark at the time, must have been about 10 o'clock at night. It wasn't really dark, it was a bit of moon shining, you could, bit of moonlight like, and I went over to McLean and he says, well, this is the situation. He says, we got to get out of here, we're getting out. I said, oh yeah. He says, well, there were 3 machine guns on the left of us, and they was machine gunning the village huts. They was shooting them up. Like, we weren't up in them, we were down on the ground and a bit of scrubbing that, we were hiding in them. He says, well, you think you could crawl out there and give them some grenades? I said, oh, well, we're going to get out. He said, that's the way we're going to get out. We're going to get out there. He said, but they got us tied down with those machine guns. There was about 90 of us in that village at the time, B Company, and plus us that had just flown over. And I said, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. He says, well, here's the grenades, we've got them here. He said, I'm coming with you. So away we go, we crawled out. I didn't think I could get so flat to the ground, really. Mm-hmm. And we got out and he gave me a nudge and we pulled the pins out of the grenades and we threw 2, like 1 each, and then waited till they went off and then pulled the pins and give them 2 more. And we give them 2 more. Then we crawled back then, and then in there, then our fellas, I went back to where I was, and our Corporal Bill Hoskins, I said to him, you know, when are we moving, Bill? Because McLean had told me we was moving out, and he said, I don't know about moving. He said, I haven't heard anything. He said, I'll go and check up. So when he went to check up, there was no one left in the village. They were all gone. Like, Bill had a look round. There was me and Skillbeck and bloody couple of B Company fellas, Arthur Swords, he had a Lewis gun, and his mate, and Lofty Balfour. There were 7 of us. And we're left there, all the others had gone. We had a bit of a talk. Says, well, looks like we've got to get out of here anyway. We've got to get out. So what we done, we had good firepower. We had a Heidelberg gun. Skillbeck had the Thompson machine gun. And Arthur Swords, he had the Lewis from B Company. And Arthur Swords had been there a week ahead of us. He was with B Company, so we made him in charge. He said, well, we'll follow you. He says, well, we'll stop together, right up tight with one another. We'll go through, and whatever comes, keep going, don't stop. If we've got to open up. He says, other than that, we'll go through. We says, right. So we thought, well, there goes. And away we went. We walked, got right up, we walked, and we more or less rubbing shoulders with the Japs. They were busy fixing up the wounded and that Doug McLean and I had caused when we threw the grenades amongst them. They were evacuating and fixing up them, and we walked. They were yabbering and that, but they thought we were them, I think, because we just walked through. We went and got out. We went in the dark. We went as far as we could, and then pulled up because it started to rain. It poured, really poured, and we reckon then we'll rest here, pull up, because we didn't know where we were going anyway. So we, right, a big tree there was, we all backed onto the tree, and each one took his turn and keeping knit guard sort of thing. And in the morning when it got daylight, we took off, and we reckoned we'd head back towards Kokoda. And we walked all day. We walked through the jungle. You couldn't, like direction-wise, you couldn't see the sun or where it was and that. We reckon we were going right towards Kokoda, and we right up to about 4 o'clock it was in the afternoon, and we come back nearly to where we started from at Efogi. So we said, oh, it's no good. Once you get off the track, you're lost. You're really lost, because you don't know where you're going. You got no compass. So we decided then to move straight up the track as a fighting patrol. The Japs had been up the track because we could see their footprints and their cigarette packets that they'd thrown in the mud. We went up the track and we didn't see a Jap. We thought we were going to run into our fellas. We didn't run into them. We kept going. It was just on dark when we got into Kokoda. There was no one there. Our fellas had burnt all our packs of that we'd left. They'd all been burnt. The fellas that were left at Kokoda had burnt all that. Anything that couldn't be of use to the Japanese, they burnt it. Like a couple of the huts were burnt. Then Arthur saw there was a tent there, a tent fly there, and actually we slept under that the rest of the night. Arthur saw it, he went scrounging around. He managed to find where they'd burnt some chocolate. It must have been a bit of a canteen they had. There was some melted chocolate and that. It had dirt on it and that, but these chocolates were melted, and we ate that and we found a bit of bully beef too. Our fellas had punctured the tins, but we knew it was fresh enough because it was only just been done the day previous. And we had a bit of a feed there and stopped overnight. And the next morning, when it got daylight, we took off back towards Deniki was the village. That was the first village out of Kokoda going back up over the Owen Stanley Ranges back towards Port Moresby. And how we knew that, because Arthur Swords, these B Company fellas that was with us, they had walked over there, they knew the way that they'd walked in. So we started to walk back there, and must have done about an hour and a half, I suppose, walking, and then we run into one of our patrols. It was hiding in the jungle, and they sprung out and held us up. There was a jet patrol coming up. And then we got Colonel Owen. He happened to come down then, and he wanted to know where we'd been. We told him we'd spent the night in Kokoda, and he said, it's full of Japs, isn't it? And I said, we never seen any. We slept there the night, and there was none there this morning. And he wanted to know where we'd come from, and we told him what had happened, and what had happened with the B Company mob that got out of Oivy. They didn't go back to Kokoda, they cut across and come up to Deniki, which was like a triangle. You had to go to Kokoda and then back up to Deniki, where you could come from Oivy up to Deniki was the same distance as going from Oivy to Kokoda, but they cut out going to Kokoda. So then Colonel Owen, he said, you better report in and get yourself a bit of a snack up there. They got a bit of baked beans going. Someone had a fire going. We had a cup of tea and a few beans and some biscuits and that. And then we had a bit of a rest, and then we went back down onto Kokoda. We went back to take our position on Kokoda, because what they reckon was to fly more troops in. They reckon if we could hold that, they'd fly more troops and get them in. But the position was, by the time the orders got back to Moresby, there was no radio. You had a telephone, and there was one wire that had run right from Kokoda back to Owen Corner, where they send the messages by phone from one village to the next village to the next village. And by the time things got organised, it was a day late, it was a day late. They couldn't fly more troops in. We were defending the airstrip. We was there, about 90 of us took up position at Kokoda right along. At Kokoda was the airstrip and a rubber plantation on the right-hand side. And then, Kokoda was quite a nice type of a garden. There was gardens there and flowers, and I don't know, it must have been the rubber plantation owner who was there, and it was quite a tidy joint. And where the aircraft used to fly out from, there was a little grass hut built. It's where they used to do their paperwork or whatever was wanted. And we're there, and anyway, we had this right along, took up positions, and Colonel Owen said, oh, if they don't attack in the day, he says, they won't attack in the night. So we thought, oh, that's all right. So we hadn't seen no Japs, so no, but we expected them to come. We had a good fire line down the track, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning when the Japanese attacked. They come up. We thought there was only a company of them, but there was bloody about a battalion of them. They come up in the hundreds. We were there shooting, or we could shoot. We were run out of ammo, like we just run out. And Colonel Owen was there, and he's throwing grenades. He's pulling the pins out and throwing them as they come hurling along. And then he finished up. He got hit in the head, and they carted him down to where the little hut was. And with us we had Dr. Vernon. He was an old chap. He was a doctor for the Angau, for the natives. He was about 60, 62 years old. And he was our doctor, and he was there, and they reckon he was with Colonel Owen and dressed him up a bit, and he had a couple of his natives, and they were holding the hurricane lamp while he dressed his wound up in his head and that. And he was going crook at them because the Japs were shooting bullets through the hut at the lights, and the natives were dancing around trying to take cover more or less. Old Doc Vernon, he was deaf as a post, he couldn't hear. He didn't know the bullets were going through. And then Colonel Owen, he finished up, he died, and then we got orders to get out. We had to evacuate and get out. We run out of ammo. And then there was Snowy Par and Rusty Holler. They had one had a Tommy gun, one had a Bren gun. And the Japs were giving a bit of a dance around where the hut was on the front of it. And there was a bit of a flagpole there, and Snowy and old Rusty finished up. They emptied their magazines onto them there, and we all took off back up to Deniki again. And took up there, and then in the morning we had a count for our wounded and a few killed. And Colonel Owen, he died there. And at Ivy, when we was at Ivy, Captain Sam Templeton, he was going to go out of the village just before the Japs had got around us at Ivy, and because there was another plane load of troops coming in, and he was going to notify them and organise them. And don't know what happened. There was a shot fired there, and it sounded like a pistol shot, and a scuffle of that, and that was the last Captain Sam Templeton that we heard of there. So with the two, we'd lost Sam Templeton and we'd lost Colonel Owen. And we were waiting then on more troops. The rest of our battalion was walking over, and we flew over in 20 minutes, and they took it 8 days to walk. And we more or less rested up a bit, sent a patrol out just to see there was nothing coming, but the Japs had got into Kokoda and they were playing around in there, and actually with Ivy, back at Ivy, we'd go on patrol then, and we got more of our fellas from the 39th Battalion, got over C Company and A Company and the Machine Gun Company and the 53rd Battalion. They were on their way, and then it was a matter of us. We was what was our, Doug McLean told us the best thing we can do is try and hold them. We'd hide on the track, take up cover and wait till they come along, the Japs, looking, patrolling along, then we'd open up on them. They used to try and get around us then, but we wouldn't wait. After we'd opened up, we'd get back and then they had to hunt us out again. But as you let them get around you, they cut you off. And you get caught between the two. You can't get back. They get you in the jungle, you get lost off the track. But our main thing was we'd learnt to always keep the track in sight, never get off the track, leave it out of your sight, otherwise you get in the jungle, you don't know which way you're walking. With our patrolling there and that we got quite a bit along from Buna. There was Hori, he was the Japanese commander. I didn't see him myself, but some of our fellas were sent out on a patrol, on a looking, like they weren't a fighting patrol, they was just to look and observe, and they seen him ride along on his white horse to Kokoda. The Emperor, I don't know what he was in charge of the 144th Japanese Imperial Forces. And then they seen some of them coming along trying to ride push bikes along there was too much mud and goo and all that. Couldn't ride a push bike. But that was just observation, what they'd seen. They came back. We used to get all the messages. It's marvellous when you knew what was going on. Your officer told you what was going on, and different ones would tell you different things about what and where. But a lot of the times we had quite a few troops there, but the operational moves that they had worked out didn't sort of come off properly. You get mixed up. And then it got that way the Japanese could spread out from Moivi. They were coming through to Dediki and not worrying about Kokoda. And they got the show of getting around us. If they had got around us, we were cut off. But we had Colonel Honor, I think it was, then took command of us, and he got back Isharava Ridge, where it was very heavily jungle, and he decided then that'd be a good spot for us to take up a defensive position where the Jap could get around us and we could defend that and hold them, because the AIF troops had come back from the Middle East. They were at Port Moresby. The 2nd, 14th, 16th, 27th Battalion, and they were going to relieve us, so we had to try and hang on there till they got to us, but they had to walk over too. And they were on their way. And then Isharava Ridge, like, it was really heavily timbered, and the Jap, he tried a frontal attack. They just kept coming and coming, and our guys just mowed them down in heaps. And they just I don't know how many, but like our fellas, it was right in the front there at that particular time. They reckon it must have been 30 or 40, and they just kept walking over one another and come out, and they just shot them. Like, and they reckoned, the heap of them that were shot in the morning, they'd all been cleared out. The chaps had picked up the deads and took them back. I don't know where that's what I heard. We're up on the side of Isharava Ridge D Company, and you could hear the Japs, they was cutting the jungle. You could hear them with their knives or whatever they had, slashes and that, slashing and cutting their way through, and right or wrong, they wanted to get around us, and we held there for 4 days all told. There was 3 days it was pretty hectic, waiting on the second 14th coming in. One of the second 14th, when he did arrive, I was laying there. I had a Thompson machine gun at the time, and this fella lands alongside me, and he had a green uniform on and that. And he said, "I'm from second 14th. We said, "Oh, geez, good to see you, you know." He said, "I'll be right now." We said, "We're here, we'll fix them up. We'll be back at Kokoda to fix them up." He said, "We're fresh. We've had experience. You guys haven't had much." We said, "No, we thank goodness you're here, you know." And he says, "I've got to go up to where the machine gunners are." I said, "I'll hear a bit further up on this ridge, Isharaba Ridge." Just through the sugar cane. It was a sugar cane native had grown the sugar cane, and he said, "I've got to go up there to the machine gunners." I said, "Well, that's where they are." I said, "Be careful. There's a sniper up there somewhere." What the Japs would do, they'd have a sniper and he'd be up in the tops of the trees, and that was his job. All he was a sniper. He had a telescopic sights on his rifle, and he'd only pick out every now and again. He was a loner. I said, "A few of our blokes have got hit." "She'd be right, we'll fix them up." He give me some of his tobacco. He'd give me his tobacco tin. He'd have a smoke. I said, "I had one." He said, keep that. I've got more." I said, "No, I don't. I've got more back in my pack." I said, "You won't get it." I said, "Hang on to your tobacco." No. So I had his tobacco. He'd gone about 20 minutes, and he come back, and he'd been hit in the shoulder. "Oh, geez," he says, what a bug of a joint this is," he says. "I've been through the Middle East." He's over there. He says, "I'm busting my guts getting over here. Haven't seen a Jap." And he says, "I've been shot in the shoulder." I rolled him one of his cigarettes and lit it and give it to him and says, "Well, there you are now. On your way back, mate. You're on your way. You've done your duty." Yeah, he got right through the shoulder. But that was just one of them things that happened. Then another fella there was there, and feeling pretty down the dumps sort of thing, and heard this noise, and then I looked around, and here's this poor bugger. He's a big fella, and he was crawling. He was on his foot. What the Japs had, they had a mountain gun. Used to fire a 2-inch mortar, like a calibre shell, and one of them had landed and hit him in the ankle, in the leg, and busted all his ankle, and he's crawling back. And he said, hang in there." He said, "I just want to get back, you know." I said, "All right." I seen him about 3 days later. He'd had his foot had been dressed. It had all new bandage on it and all that, but he was still hobbling on. He was still on his hopping, like one leg in his hands and that, and he was hopping along the track. That was 3 days later, that same fella that produced. What have I got to go crook about, you know, when you got that sort of thing? He was, they reckon he wouldn't get anyone to carry him. He wanted to get back under his own steam. So that was that with him.
What do you remember of the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels?
Oh, they were good. They done a mighty job, really. What they'd do was from village to village, they'd carry supplies from one village to the next village, and then that was their job, and then they'd go back, and then they'd come again. The next, all they'd do was carrying. And with our wounded, a lot of them that couldn't walk, they made up stretchers. The 8 of them would carry them on these homemade stretchers and all that. But I was talking to one of the fuzzy wuzzies, he could speak English. And I said to him, you know, he's carrying a wounded, and said to him, you know, hard job. Oh, he says, number one job this, he liked it. He says, very good this. He says, that job they got carrying the supplies, that's no good, because you've got to go from that village to that village, and then you've got to go back. This job, very slow, take your time, no time limit, and if they didn't get to the village in the night, they used to make a shelter out of the jungle for the ones they were carrying and look after them. But he reckoned it was all right. He liked the job better carrying the wounded than what he did carrying the ammunition and supplies and trying to get them up the front, because when you get a heap of, I don't know how many of us were there at the time, trying to supply us with food and ammunition, and that it was a big job until such times as they start to drop food at Lake Ola. It was a dry lake they'd found, and then they could drop food there. And it wasn't so bad then. It eased a lot of the congestion of the supplies getting through, but you weren't overfed really.
How did you get off the track when you were coming back after Isharava?
Oh, after Isharava, we come down off the ridge at night time. It was dark, pitch black. It was rough. It was slippery. We had to come down in the night, and there was all of us getting down off this ridge, coming back. We had getting back, going back up the track. The 2nd 14th Battalion were there, and they was getting back too. We got through the night. We managed to get back and hit where the trail went back to Urura Creek Crossing. And I was then got mixed up with some of the other fellas, like we mixed up lot. We didn't know where we were, who was with them. I happened to be with, there must have been about 20 of us with Captain Bidstruff. He was our captain. He was there. We was on the left-hand side of the track then. He says, oh, we'll have a rest here. He said, the 2nd 14th are going back. He said, they're going to take up position, then we're going to go back through them and be rear party. And when the 2nd 14th were starting to get back, the Japs had broken through and come right down off the top of Isharava Ridge and cut off, and they'd cut off a whole lot of us. There was a company of them, company of Japanese, I reckon. And the 2nd 14th went through there, and then they didn't give the Jap a chance there. They just opened up with everything that had fired. Everyone was shooting at the jungle. Even you couldn't see anyone, you just shot at the Japs that were there. They got shot all right. Even the side of the jungle, it was really, with the bullets and all that, it was like chaff. It was as if a bloody hailstorm had gone through and shredded all the jungle. There's that much lead in that flying. And then Captain Bidstruff said to us, he says, come on, he says, we go through too. We went through and got through, and then the 2nd 14th had pulled up, and we'd got back through them and back to Urura. we had to head back then to Eora Creek, to the crossing, and the village that was there. We sheltered for the night there. But that's where Kingsbury of the 2nd 14th, he was awarded the VC. The VC won there. But he started that stampede through there with the Japs. Yeah, it must have been a company of them they knocked off. Just as well they did, otherwise if they'd have got around to see, we was in big trouble.
How long were you fighting for on the Kokoda Track?
Actually, by the time I flew in and come out, we was there for 7 weeks. Some of B Company were there for longer. B Company was first in, then we flew over, and then the rest of our company walked over. It was about 7 weeks, 8 weeks, constant battle in the jungle. After the Isharava Ridge turned out, we went along that track where the 2nd 14th went. We never struck combat anymore. That was our last firing spot there. What we done, after Eora Creek, then we got orders to get back further. They'd broken through. And then we got told that all those with automatic weapons, hand them in. So we put them in a heap because there was another mob coming in to take them. And then they come and told us, come and get the automatic weapons again, because the chaps had broken through somewhere else. We had to go out and attack again. But then they says, no, leave them there. And the other battalion came up and took the weapons, and we got back then to Minari. We got in there, and the village there, and that's where there was plenty of food there. They'd dropped plenty of food with the aircraft. The old biscuit bomber had been in and dropped plenty of bully beef and biscuits and baked beans. We had a good feed there. Even got a cup of tea.
Your clothes would have been in a pretty bad state.
Oh, they were shredded, they was. Actually, we had shorts and shirts and a pair of leather leggings. The 39th Battalion was issued with leggings that was the 2nd 14th. Oh, the fellas from the First World War in the Light Horse used to wear leggings, and we was issued with these leather leggings. So Isharava was the finish of our combat, really. We were back to Minari, and that's when Colonel Honor and Dame Rapira was doing a bit of filming then. Rapira was there filming, and then we got orders then to move from there back to the next village. Then it was more or less just all those that could was get back. He was on no set time or no orders. You get back from village to village, and we got a shave and a wash and a clean shirt and shorts and socks.
And they had tea break stations along the track?
Not really, no. There's only one part there was the old salvo. The Salvation Army bloke, he was boiling up he had some 4-gallon tins he was boiling, making a tea, and as we come through, we all got a cup of tea. The thing was, you had no cup. We never had cups. We disbanded the cups. But he had a few cups. We used to all just share them and drink out of them and then get back as far as you could, quick as you could. We came right back then to Owen's Corner, and then the trucks were there. There were some trucks that you could get on them and ride back, and they took us back in. There was a camp supplied by around in Koitaki there, so we're in the all tents were up with that. We just come and settled in there, and then we got reissued with clothing and packs and full gear again. We got reissued with everything. A complete new lot.
And did you get sick?
Oh, pretty well everyone really was sick. A lot of malaria, a lot of dengue fever, a lot of dysentery, a lot of leg trouble climbing up and down the trail and that, slipping and crashing. And actually there wasn't that many. I think when we was relieved at Minari, I think there was about 75 of us on parade there when Pera was doing a bit of filming.
75 left out of a battalion of about 1,200.
Yeah, I don't think it was about 900, I think, went in, because the transport fellas, they didn't go in, and Bren gun carrier fellas, they stopped back at Moresby, and yeah, but out of that, there came out of it was about 75. It was what you'd call fit. They weren't really fit, they were pretty well crooked. Then we had, when we got there, they had all our parcels and that had been sent over. We had cakes, Christmas cakes, and it was just too much. And then you start eating that, and if you wasn't with dysentery, you had it then because you had too much of the goodies.
And did you end up in hospital?
Oh yeah, I did. I was with. We was at Hombrom Bluff on the final thing when the Jap was pushing back. We were on Hombrom Bluff right up on the top end, and that we'd been reinforced with all new reinforcements, but we had with us a lot of reinforcements which were AIF fellas, and half of our fellas were AIF and half of them were chocos, and that. Then I finished up Hombrom Bluff. I went into hospital and then got back and headquarters and got back then into the transport. They wanted us back in the transport driving the trucks again. So I went from D Company back into headquarter company and was back in the transport.
And how long had you been in New Guinea before you got relieved to go back to Melbourne?
We was there about 15 months, 16 months, I think it was. We went there in 42 and we came back in 43 about March 1943. Then we come back, we landed at Cairns and then went up onto the Atherton tablelands, Herberton, and then we had Wandekla was the rail station. We got the train there and come back to Melbourne on 14 days accumulated leave. And that's when, on our way back up, we were notified then that the 39th Battalion had been disbanded, and I don't know where all the fellas went. All the chocos that was still in the 39th, most of them went into the 36th Battalion. I don't know where the AIF fellas, where they went to. I finished up, I was back in hospital again up in, where was it? Queensland there somewhere, Anoomba, in there, and then there was a staging camp, because I was ex-39th Battalion, and I had no unit. Like I was just Noonba and Townsville and Cairns. When I was at Cairns, there was out there at Lake Bream, and when I was, after I'd been cooked a convalescent, we went to Lake Bream, convalescent, and took us to Magnetic Island to recuperate. It wasn't bad that way. We had a good holiday that way.
And what do you think it's important for generations to come to remember about New Guinea campaign?
As far as New Guinea goes, I'd say keep away from the place. Bloody mosquitoes eat you. Oh, she was rough, but it was an experience. I finished up after the 39th. I went back to New Guinea again, but I was in the one-off radio maintenance section. I was a transport driver for the one-off radio maintenance section, which was out from Ward's airstrip. It was a camp of 27 personnel. There were 3 officers, mainly sergeants and craftsmen, and 5 general duties and 5 drivers, and it was a real good camp, really, because it was a permanent camp. Infantry's no good, you don't have no beds, no nothing, but where we were with the radio maintenance, you had stretchers, we had stretchers and permanent tents. And you weren't shifted around, you knew where you was, you knew what you was doing each day, and you had a good time, plenty of food, you had a cook at a cookhouse.
Oh, well, we've come to the end of our time. So the second time you went back to New Guinea, all the good things made up for the bad things that you had to put up with the first time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'd like to thank you for your interview.
Good.
Thank you very much.